And we are back and recording here. So we will stop at several different points throughout today's presentation to take any questions that come in. Encourage you to put those into the Q&A box, as well as you can use the chat window for questions. Please select all presenters or all panelists when you do send in your questions to make sure that both I and Mr. Lopresti are able to hear those. You should be able to hear me out of your computer speakers. If you have any issues with the audio, you can go up to the Communicate tab and then Audio Broadcast, restart your feed. If you prefer, or if you continue to have any technical issues, you can always use the teleconference information in your confirmation email. I will be on hosting all day today, so if you do have any technical questions, you can find me in the chat window. Again, my name is Cashin Yu, and the host of today's meeting. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our CCAP administrator here at the partnership, Mr. Jim Lopresti. So Jim, take it away.
Thank you very much, Cashin, and welcome everyone to the second in our three-part series of CCAP Wednesday webinars. We presume that most persons who attend these webinars are CCAP candidates or potential candidates who are considering what is necessary to complete their submissions. Some of you may be new to CCAP, so we will have just a very few brief introductory remarks. The CCAP program itself is the only national peer review-based recognition of community action managers and leaders. It's based on original input in its design from over 150 community action leaders in the field, and hundreds, many hundreds more have been involved in the 25 years of the evolution of the program. And there you see on your screen the new CCAPs. Were acknowledged in the annual partnership convention last year in San Francisco. The program is based on two pillars. The first of those two pillars is the Community Action Body of Knowledge Outline. The Body of Knowledge Outline covers 5 topic areas considered to be crucial knowledge areas for anyone who works in the field of community action in a leadership capacity. That includes knowledge A, of the history of community action, B, knowledge of the vision and values of community action, C, knowledge about the traditional management skills, D, knowledge about 21st century leadership skills, most current thought about leadership positions, and E, theories of poverty, including the strategies to address and alleviate conditions of poverty. Those middle 3, the vision and value of community action, traditional management skills, and 21st century leadership, are of special concern for the executive skills portfolio, as you will see in a few moments. The second of those pillars for the Community Action Program is the Community Action Code of Ethics, which sets forth the standard for professional behavior that guides the decisions of community action leaders. And as a community action CCAP candidate, one is expected to agree to and sign that Code of Ethics. Using a point system, the CCAP process is a process for assessment. Assessment process in particular by peer evaluators of 3 things for those who seek to be certified. First, their experience in community action, which is documented in the candidate data form. Our previous webinar in the archive addressed the topics of the candidate data form. The second is an assessment of one's skills in doing the work of community action, which is the topic for today's webinar. And then the third is assessment of knowledge about community action, which occurs at the CCAP examination, which occurs in June of each year. Our March 30th webinar will cover that topic. So those are the 3 activities for assessment, where your peers assess your experience, your skills, and knowledge to determine that you have the requisite experience, skills, and knowledge to be known as a certified community action professional. Today we're going to look at that middle assessment process, the assessment of your skills in the executive skills portfolio, commonly referred to as the ESP, in which you showcase your skills as a leader in community action. The ESP, or Executive Skills Portfolio, has two interrelated sections to it. And we're going to look today at each of those sections, how they're constructed, and some hints and guidance about putting them together. The first section is the sample of work that shows how you've applied your management, that's section C of the body of knowledge, and leadership skills, that's section D of the body of knowledge, as well as your putting to work the vision and values of community action, section B of the knowledge, body of knowledge skills. The second component or section of the Executive Skills Portfolio are 4 essays which you write to relate your work that you present in the sample, to relate it to those sections of body of knowledge outline, as well as relating it to the partnership standards of excellence for agencies. The Executive Skills Portfolio, now we're going to talk about how it's valued, how it's structured, and some insights about evaluation from this point forward. And I will pause at certain points to see what kinds of questions you have typed in the Q&A box on your screen. The Executive Skills Portfolio is evaluated and scored by a team of trained CCAPs, and each Executive Skills Portfolio also is examined by at least one of the members of the Certification Commission. It can earn up to 500 points toward a required minimum of 700 points in the combination of valuation of your candidate data form and Executive Skills Portfolio total of 700 points that you need to take the certification examination. That is to say, you can earn up to 500 points on your candidate data form and up to 500 points on your Executive Skills Portfolio. Between the two of them, you must have a total minimum of 700 points, and within each, the score for your candidate data form, as well as the score for your Executive Skill Portfolio, must reach a minimum of 300 points. It is due on the 3rd Wednesday of February of each year. That is to say, if one anticipates the possibility of qualifying to take the certification examination in June of 2016, that means your candidate data form, which is due on next Wednesday for those completing it, and then your score for your Executive Skills Portfolio, which is due on the 3rd Wednesday of February, must total a minimum of 700 points. Now let's take a look in more detail at what is involved in the Executive Skills Portfolio. Let's look first at the work sample details, what is involved. First of all, the work must be your own work. And the evaluators who are looking at your Executive Skills Portfolio, each team member's work individually, and then their scores are coordinated to achieve a score. Those evaluators must individually be able to determine that this work, in fact, is yours. A little bit more about that later. And second, the work itself must have been done no more than 3 years prior to the date of your enrollment as a candidate. Now, that 3 years rule means that whatever work you're going to choose to showcase your skills, that product that you show must not have ended before 3 years before you've begun your candidacy. In some instances, Some projects were begun earlier and took a number of years and were still ongoing and not finished at that time. The point is not the start time, the point is the finished time for a product that is used as an example of your skills. And then third, you must demonstrate your management choices in that portfolio. So what kind of work might it be that is a work sample? It might be a grant application. It might be a report you did on an evaluation of an activity in your agency. It might be a training program that you developed and designed. It may be a curriculum you developed for participants in one of your programs in perhaps housing or community service or healthcare. It might be guidance for your consumers. It might be a policies and procedures manual. Whatever it is, it must be some kind of a product that can be examined by your evaluators. And attached to that work sample, you have to submit in no more than 3 typed double-spaced pages, and using an appropriate type, particularly if you're going to be doing an electronic submission. We'll talk about the kinds of submissions a little later. But in that work sample, you attach the following descriptive materials, and they are, first, the exact purpose and goals of this work. A summarization of purpose. You might think of this as your written down elevator speech about your program. Then a description of your role in producing the work. A couple reflections about when you're describing your role in producing the work. The CCAP Commission presumes that there's some level of teamwork involved in whatever the project is or product that you're presenting in your portfolio. But in that teamwork, you need to be able to demonstrate that your role is a leadership role. Third, if there is a budget for the work sample you are providing, that budget needs to be attached. Whether there is a budget or not does not affect how it is scored. If there is a budget involved, though, it must be attached. And then any documents that come from the work which show results need to be attached to the portfolio. So those are the items that actually make up the portfolio work sample itself. Now, I'm going to pause to see if anyone has any questions about the work sample itself before we proceed to the next section, which is the series of essays that addresses particular questions in relation to that work sample. I don't yet see any questions in the Q&A box. Do you have any yet, Cashin, that I may not have seen?
I do not. So this serves as a nice reminder point that you can put those questions into that Q&A box as mentioned on that right side panel. And do, of course, select all panelists if you can. That way you ensure that both Jim and I see them.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to the next section of the Executive Skills Portfolio. Again, we'll look at what the content is. Then we'll talk later about formatting and submission. Then let's take a look at, oh, I'm sorry, I moved too quickly, at the first of the 4 essays. The essays are your way of demonstrating not just that you used, that you're presenting a work sample that showcases your skills, but that you understand certain factors that are at play in producing this work sample. The first of those 4 essays is an essay on traditional management skills where you explain how the work sample shows that you understand and can use these traditional management practices, that is the areas of planning, organizing, directing, and evaluating. It's important that you be succinct That is one of the issues in writing these essays, that you are limited to a 750-word maximum. And you're required to cross-reference. When you talk about how you put to work traditional management practices in planning or organizing or directing and evaluating, you do need to reference where in your work sample there is evidence about what you are speaking or what you are addressing in your essay, on the page number, or if it's a series of slides in a PDF of a PowerPoint presentation, which slide number it is, so that the evaluators, when they read your response to that essay, then can see and reflect back to the work sample specifically what it is that you are talking about. That is very important, to be able to cross-reference your response to your actual sample. The second essay is an essay on positive leadership skills. Now, that essay has two parts to it, and both are required. The first part is you are asked to demonstrate how your leadership style helped you as a leader, particularly in regards to this product in your organization. Now, there's no specific leadership theory that you need to address. You just need to be able to address something that would be understandable to someone who knows leadership, knows the field of leadership. So whatever theoretical stance you use is up to you. But you need to demonstrate how that style has helped you as a leader in an organization. The second question, or part of the essay, is how has that style limited your role as a leader in an organization, or how could it limit your role as a leader in an organization? In other words, the evaluators are not looking for your demonstration that your leadership skills were the perfect answer to what is required in terms of leading an organization in matching a needed task, but it's more for your demonstration of your understanding of the ins and outs of leadership and the challenges of it, so that you have the ability to offer self-criticism. That's important. So it's not just how your style has helped you as a leader, but also what the limitations of that style might be or could be. All right? Let's take a look at essay number 3. Essay number 3 asks you to explain how the work sample shows that you understand and have used the vision and values of community action. This is one of the highest valued parts in terms of what evaluators are looking for when they evaluate your executive skills portfolio, because you're not just writing about leadership skills or nonprofit management. You're writing specifically about leadership skills and nonprofit management for community action. So demonstrating specifically how your work affects the vision and values, or puts to practice, rather, the vision and values of community action. Now, as mentioned before, especially around essay question number 1, in which you talk about your leadership skills and need to cross-reference, your management skills in essay number 1, and need to cross-reference to your actual portfolio work sample, that is especially crucial in essay 3. And to assist with that, in the documents on the website of the partnership that give you guidance for, and I'll get back to remind you about that later, where those documents are. In those documents that give you guidance for generating your portfolio and writing your essays, there is given to you a worksheet in which you actually show where and how your response to this essay question relates to the actual work sample. And this is a screenshot in the next 2 pages of that worksheet or cross-reference check sheet. You'll see in column 1, you check if that particular part of the body of knowledge section on the community action, vision, and values is addressed in your portfolio. And you'll see that in column 2, you place the number of the page or slide or whatever it might be in your work sample that is evidence of your claim that that part of the vision and values body of knowledge outline is addressed. And it continues through the whole of the vision and values body of knowledge outline, all sections of it. Now, it is not expected that every work sample addresses all of those parts of the body of knowledge outline and the vision and values of community action. And some candidates may be overzealous and check all of them because they believe that there's at least some possibility that that particular item marked in the body of knowledge outline on vision and values is somehow related to the work sample. Be careful not to overreach, because if there's a weak connection between your claim and the page number you show, that means a lessened score. So it means take breadth of look at the vision and values. Take breadth of look at those vision and values when you think about the project that you want to choose for your portfolio. But think about what really enhances that, what exhibits those components of the vision and values of community action, and check those that are strongly represented in your essay. It doesn't have to be a lot of them. It just needs to be important that the ones you claim are actually represented in your work sample. Now let's take a look at the last of the 4 essays. And the last of the 4 essays asks you to demonstrate how your work sample contributes to your agency's attainment or enhancement of one of the partnership standards of excellence, or how it at least has the capacity to contribute to one of or some of those 35 standards. This is not something, again, where it has to, you have to demonstrate that it actually has impacted, but it has the potential to somehow enhance the agency's effectiveness or efficiency, perhaps in its growth in organizational experience or excellence, or in its improved transparency to constituents. Whatever it might be that you can demonstrate that your work sample in some way has the power or potential to enhance the agency's quality and movements towards excellence. And that means that you need to be aware of what this signature program of the Partnership for Agencies, what that program entails, and look at those standards of excellence. Now, that covers the 4 essays that must be submitted along with your sample. I'm going to go to the next section to give more guidance about submission and looking at format in the submission process. But before I do that, I want to make sure that we have addressed any questions you might have about how the ESP is structured, and any questions you might have about the content of those essays. As I look over at the Q&A box, I don't see any. Let me check with you, Cashin, to see if there's any item that I might have missed.
We do. We have a question that came in just a moment ago that asks about if their experience involves work outside of their CAA, how does that affect the scoring?
I'm sorry, if something involves something outside of my work in my community action agency,
Correct.
I'm not quite sure what that might mean. If it's you can demonstrate as part of your responsibility in community action, and your responsibility for your job somehow takes you outside the agency and has you involved in a statewide activity or in some way that in some way enhances community action in the community or the principles of community action, but relates to your responsibility in your agency, that's very likely to be a very effective executive skills portfolio. If that's what you mean by that, I'm suspecting it's probably what you mean.
I believe so, and of course, welcome to put any additional information in. It looks like she had noted work with a food pantry as some extra information there. So
that may be that's a very likely content area. I would suggest if you have specific questions about, as you look for what the word sample you're going to write about, if you can connect to one of our CCAP mentors who have written executive skills portfolios before, they might give you some guidance about that. I'm not permitted to give guidance about content for a portfolio. I'm only permitted to give guidance about process and in general what material needs to be in the portfolio. But it would be valuable for you if you talk about your project and make sure there's some product you can show from your project with a CCAP mentor. Now, if you don't have one in your location, you can go to the partnership website, to the CCAP link, and there you will find the list of CCAPs who've agreed to be mentored and would gladly talk about that with you. In addition, further questions you might have about the process of putting it together, and you might want to email them to me, and I will remind you of this later. I'll be glad to be available to you post-webinar, and I'm available at ccapcontact@aol.com. I'll remind you again of that a little bit later. Someone else I noticed asked the question of how many samples of work can you submit, and the answer is only one. That one sample must be the sample that you relate your essays to. Okay. Someone said, how many samples of work can you submit? If only one, can you submit two that are related? That's a question that really is one more about formatting. If you can pull it together to demonstrate, I'm going to get back to the point of product, that it's one cohesive product, then you can probably combine samples to manifest that it's that one product or one outcome. That would be your challenge. That might make it a little bit more difficult for an evaluator to understand. So you're really going to have to be extra clear, particularly when you write your essays, how this is one product. Okay, I think I've gotten to all the questions. Have I, Cashin?
Well, looks like we've got it for now.
Okay, thanks. Let's now, and again, I welcome you to follow up with, after this webinar, with any other questions you have about the work sample, what needs to be in it, about the essays, what needs to be in it. If there's some additional questions as you think about it. And also, again, invite you to connect with a CCAP mentor through the partnership website and the CCAP link to talk over in more detail what you are thinking about submitting. I urge you to do that very quickly because that February, third Wednesday, February deadline comes up quite quickly. let's take a look at some guidance about your submission, and then talk about format and then how to submit. Okay? Some guidance about your submission. Again, I can't overemphasize the point that you must make sure to refer to specific pages in your work sample when you reference questions that relate to it. You must be able to link back to the work sample if you're trying to demonstrate about something about yourself and your skills, and referring back to that sample needs to be able to be traced specifically. I emphasize it's a crucial question, especially on vision and values. Second, if the evaluator cannot determine what you did, either by yourself or during your part in the team's effort, your work sample will be disqualified. So you need to be very careful in those in the attached descriptive pages that ask you to describe your role in the work sample. You need to be careful that that is very clear, that the evaluator can discern that. If two evaluators independently determine that they cannot make that decision, that is a fatal flaw, and your portfolio will be disqualified. Additionally, if the evaluators cannot determine that the work was done within that required 3-year limit, your work will be disqualified. It's a fatal flaw. Again, if two evaluators independently determine that they cannot make that decision, the ESP is qualified. So you want to be very careful that the documentation you send is dated. That is to say, the work sample is dated and that you can point that out. It's especially helpful in your descriptive pages that you note that in some way. And again, it's not that if your work, the product might have been developed, past the date, been a multi-year project. It's when the project ended that is what the evaluator is going to look at. Okay? To determine that 3-year window, that's 3 years before your enrollment as a candidate. So that's some guidance about your submission. Let's take a look at formatting and summarize that for you. First is that descriptive material. Again, it's the purpose of the work. It's your elevator speech written down. Second, what your role in the work. And again, you've emphasized the importance of that being able to be determined, and understand that, again, the commission expects that there's going to be a team involved in this work that you do. And then third, the budget, if there is one. You do not have to have something that has a budget attendant. And any documents to report on the results. That's the first thing of the first part of your portfolio submission. The second of the 3 parts of that submission is the document which describes the work. That is the actual work sample, which is that document. And then finally, of the 4 essays, those are the 3 components in that sequence. Okay? Let's talk about how to submit that executive skills portfolio. I'm going to give very specific guidance about that. First of all, an electronic format or digital format of the ESP is preferred. It is not required. But let me explain. Evaluation of the executive skills portfolio is a very lengthy, labor-intensive process on the part of the team of evaluators. It takes up to 7 weeks from the time when executive skills portfolios are submitted on the due date till all of the evaluation process is completed and no candidate is informed about the results of the evaluation until all executive skills portfolios have been evaluated. So it can take up to about 7 weeks. If we have a number of hard copy executive skills portfolio, it makes it far more complicated to get back and forth sending of those documentations to evaluators. It goes through at least 2 rounds of circulation and sometimes more. Obviously, that is a lot more quickly done when portfolios are digitally submitted. And we hope, in fact, that we're able to have them submitted entirely by electronic format, but if you cannot, accommodation will be made for you. All items must be included in whatever form of submission you use. So if you're going to digitally submit your completed portfolio, you cannot send some of it digitally and some of it in hard copy. All right? That is to say, that's the next point, actually, that they cannot be separately submitted, but that all items must be within one format or the other. Okay? Some more about how to submit those digitally generated portfolios. Email the file to ccapcontact@aol.com. That's the same place you would submit any questions that you have concerning anything we've discussed in this webinar. The formats that are acceptable are Microsoft Word, where it's acceptable up to Word 2013, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. However, if you use Microsoft PowerPoint, we strongly urge that you convert it to a PDF form because it takes less bytes. A JPEG and or PDF file are especially acceptable formats. Oh, that's MS Office 2013 or earlier. That's a typo in this slide. You can use 2013. We suggest that you keep a hard copy for yourself. But I also suggest that, if at all possible, you condense your files. We have found that the most usable format for circulating executive skills portfolio happens when a candidate scans. Many of you have complex, more advanced, well, not so advanced anymore, machines and copy machines where you can scan documents and make PDF files. That is usually the best way to submit an executive skills portfolio, to make it into one PDF file. And if your PDF file is extra large, particularly if it's over, well, I'll get to that in a few minutes. Keep a hard copy for yourself for the purpose of reference, definitely. The transmission of an executive skills portfolio has the same deadline due as that for the due deadline for hard copies submitted at the partnership office. That is to say, that ESP is due at ccapcontact@aol.com on the 3rd Wednesday of February. That is, if it is date stamped from your time zone, that it has been sent on that date before 12 midnight, that means you have submitted on time. If it is date stamped after 12 midnight, it will be considered as a submission for 2017. Okay? Back to that point I was going to make about size of the file. We suggest that if the file is larger than 10 megabytes, that it's probably better for you to use Dropbox and send the link to that Dropbox document to ccapcontact@aol.com. That will make it much easier to transmit your portfolio to your evaluators. So especially if you can condense that into one document. In the past, we've had candidates put their executive skills portfolio up into 12 or 14 documents. That makes for a very cumbersome process and we've had to then, here in our office, condense it ourselves and repackage it or, et cetera, put it into zip files. So we ask you, please condense them. And if you do condense them and it's more than 10 megabytes, we suggest using Dropbox as a depository. Next point is very important, and that is that receipts of executive skills portfolio is acknowledged by return email. Now, sometimes emails wind up in the spam box, but that email address is checked very frequently every day, particularly in these months when CDFs and executive skills portfolios are due. So it's checked frequently each day, every day of the week. But things can go wrong. So if you do not get a message within a few days saying, we have received your ESP, and particularly I ask you to look at that after the third Wednesday of February, give a few more days because there's a flood of them that happens on the due date. If you don't get a message that says that we have received your executive skills portfolio, please send a message again to ccapcontact@aol.com asking for confirmation of receipt of that digital submission. Let's take a look at what happens if it's hard copy submission. It is an alternative, not preferred. If it is sent in hard copy, you must send 2 copies. And it must arrive at the partnership office in Washington, D.C. That's not the date it's postmarked, not the date it's stamped received by UPS. It's the date on which it arrives at the partnership office. Therefore, it's very important for you, if you use that format, to use a trackable delivery system which notes when it has been received. There is no accommodation made for inclement weather unless that is a matter of delayed receipt in Washington, D.C., if the office is closed because of snow or something like that. Also, what's important, there's no notification of receipt of ESP sent to a candidate from the partnership office. That means that your tracked delivery receipt is your confirmation that it has been received. Now, and the last point about when you hear about, one more thing about this, that all candidates who currently have a CDF on file will receive reminders about this method for submitting ESPs in late January this year. And then let me close with what happens after that. What happens after all the executive skills portfolios have been scored. And again, I said that will take up to 7 weeks, so it winds up being in the end of March, beginning of January, beginning of April. When all the scores have been received and all concerns have been addressed in the scoring process, the score of the candidate data form is audited again. It is combined with the score for the executive skills portfolio. If those 2 scores meet the threshold where the CDF is a minimum of 300 points, the executive skills is a minimum of 300 points, and the combined score is a minimum of 700 points, the candidate receives an email message from ccapcontact@aol.com over the signature of the chair of the commission indicating that the candidate qualifies to take the examination in June of that year, and further information will be sent to the candidate. If that combined score threshold of 700 points is not met, the candidate is given a summary of what the score was for the candidate data form and what the score is for the executive skills portfolio, so that the candidate knows what needs to happen in subsequent years to qualify for the examination. Okay, now let me check to see if there are any questions about the format of the executive skills portfolio or the submission process. As I look, I don't see any questions in the Q&A box. Have I missed any?
Looks like we have one that just came in that second. What if it is your last year to take the exam and you do not have a score?
First of all, CCAP candidacy lasts for 3 years. So you know that the full possibility is within 3 years. One cannot qualify, obviously, until both the CDF and executive skills portfolio have been received as well as scored. Once a candidate data form has been received and an executive skills portfolio has received, a score is given. So there's no way you wouldn't know once you have made both submissions of a candidate data form and an executive skills portfolio whether or not you've qualified to take the exam. So you would never be in a circumstance of having submitted both and not know your score. That is, if you haven't qualified yet. So that should answer your question, because there would be no instance where you wouldn't know your score. Now, if you haven't submitted a candidate data form and never submitted an executive skills portfolio, there is no report to give, because the candidate data form score is actually just held as a preliminary score unaudited until an executive skills portfolio is received, and only then is a candidate data form officially assigned a score for the CDF. It is a provisional score. That's because there are certain triggers of audits that are done that are more technical than we want to get to in this webinar, and unless you wish to further contact me and ask about that. So I hope that answers your question. If it has not, please follow up. I see another question is being typed right now. The question is, if you do not reach 700 and have been notified that you did not, are you saying you have time within the 3 years to submit? Definitely. Now, let me give some examples of what might happen, and very frequently does happen. Well, first of all, let me give you what the average score usually is. Very interestingly, and this is a credit to the developers of the CCAP process, which actually has been developed with the guidance of the framers of the Certified Association Executive designation of the American Society of Association Executives. So it's good, strong leadership in terms of the development of the program. But very interestingly, over the 25-year history of the CCAP program, the candidates who qualify to take the exam average about 350 points on their candidate data form and about 350 points on their executive skills portfolios. But let's talk about a scenario where someone doesn't qualify. So let's say that someone who doesn't qualify submitted a candidate data form, and on that CDF, they received 310 points, okay? And then they submitted an executive skills, well, let's give them a little more. Let's say they got the 350 points required. And then they submitted an executive skills portfolio that came up to 320 points. which would be a total of 670 points, which means that that candidate is 30 points below the threshold for qualification. But you'll notice both score, candidate data form and the ESP, met the individual target of 300 points minimum, but the total isn't enough. So the candidate will know in April of that year when, let's say it's the first year of that candidate's candidacy, that they fell 30 points short of reaching the target. And when they get the report, they will, in their report, see that they scored 350 points on the candidate data form and 320 on the executive skills portfolio. But they are aware, the candidate is aware that I've done a lot more in my work in community action in the past year, and I'm going to be doing a lot more in the upcoming year that beefs up my candidate data form. For example, I know that I'm going to be employed in my position for an additional year, which automatically adds 15 points to my candidate data form, which means it's going to go up to 365, which reduces my, needing to get 30 points. I only need to get 15. So that means that a candidate can submit an addendum to the candidate data form by the next January and anticipate that by their new candidate data form, they will raise the score that in the following year, 2017, they will qualify. What happens in that instance is anytime a candidate has both a candidate data form and an executive skills portfolio, and then if that candidate submits a new candidate data form before the next cycle's deadline, January the following year, if that candidate achieves that 700-point threshold, then immediately when that candidate data form is evaluated, the candidate gets back a letter from the chair of the commission indicating they've reached the threshold to take the exam in that subsequent year. So that's one scenario. But let's say in a different scenario that that same candidate did submit a CDF that gave them a total candidate data form of 350 points and an executive skills portfolio that scored 280 points, which would have given that person a total of 630 points. Well, they might have enough points, again, on their candidate data form in the following year to give a total of 700 points. Because the executive skills fell below the threshold of 300 points, the candidate will be required to submit an executive skills portfolio. That means it's very important to submit an excellent portfolio. And candidates do not have an advance, then, of submitting a portfolio anyway, what that provisional candidate data form score is anyway. I hope that rather detailed information has been helpful to the person who asked the question about not reaching the 700-point total. Again, if that's not clear and you need more clarification, I want to remind you that any message sent to ccapcontact@aol.com concerning the whole process of a CCAP candidacy, it's my responsibility as a CCAP administrator to give you all the information you need on process of becoming a CCAP to become successful. But when it comes to content for the program, again, that's a relationship between you and your mentor, if you have one, or those who give guidance to you about your work as a community action leader. Let me see if there are any other, I don't see any other questions in the question and answer box. Have I missed any, Cashin?
I don't know that you've missed, but I do think there is a little bit of a nuance in a couple of the questions that kind of came in together about the scoring. Can you also kind of walk through your scenario if this is, in fact, the third year of your candidacy instead of at the beginning of the cycle?
Right. If someone does not sufficiently reach those scores, or if someone reaches those scores and does not reach the required minimum score in the examination of their third year, all those scores, well, the examination score just disappears. We have to take it over again. You don't redo an examination. You have to take a new one. If the CDF score, CDF and ESP do not equal the totals that they're required to equal within the third year, those scores that one actually obtained are archived. And the candidate does have the choice to repurchase another 3-year candidacy. You do not have to go through the process of getting new letters of recommendation or new, fill out new enrollment form and all of that, but you do need to purchase a whole new candidacy. And when you purchase a whole new candidacy, those archived previous scores are reactivated and are the starting point for a new candidacy period. However, the Commission will not reinstate for an additional 3-year period if you cannot fulfill it in a second 3-year period of being a CCAP candidate. There's not, that's the end of the process. So it is possible to reinstate a candidacy if you haven't done it in the 3-year candidacy. That's why we recommend to candidates, once you become a candidate, begin your submissions so that your 3-year window is a useful window to you. I hope that answers that question. Did it answer it, you think, adequately for your purposes, Cashin?
I think so, and of course, welcome if you did not feel like we covered all those, because like I said, there were a couple of kind of related questions that all came in together. If we missed any pieces of it, do let us know, but I think we are good for now.
Okay. Okay, then that final reminder, I stand ready to be of assistance to you and look forward to your getting the message from the chair of the CCAP Commission that you have obtained the appropriate scores to qualify for that examination in June of this year, and really would look forward to seeing you at the Partnership's annual convention in Austin, Texas, to welcome you to the group of certified community action professionals. Again, it is my responsibility to assist you in any way I possibly can to become successful in this process. Thank you for participating in today's webinar, and a reminder, as Cashin said, the webinar on candidate data form has been archived. This one will be archived soon, and please check in with the and sign in for our webinar on the examination on Wednesday, March 30th. Thank you for participating today.
Thank you, everyone.